And welcome back to day 36 of Survivor 50 Seasons and 50 Days. I just finished watching Survivor Ghost Island, and it was a chore like the last two times I've watched Survivor Ghost Island for 42 and 42 and 46 and 46. But I have a full panel this time to discuss everything Ghost Island, starting with our returnee from, 2 weeks ago, a week or two ago. We have Cam. To my bottom left, we have Michelle joining. And then we have Jordan Kalish. A panel like this. This is my SNY panel. I've been like really excited for it for a bit now, so I'm glad I could get all three of you on. And just Michelle, before we went live, you said that you enjoyed Ghost Island. So my question
Yeah.
to you is: going into the season, what were your expectations based off of what we had been teased and see at the end of season 35? And for you personally, do you feel like it lived up to those expectations?
So Ghost Island has a really special place in my heart because I started watching Survivor in 2021. And I started because I was getting my PhD, and in one of my classes, we had to watch a whole season of Survivor and then write about the psychology theories in it. So that was actually David versus Goliath. But I started watching the seasons backwards. So Ghost Islands was one of the first seasons that I watched, and I also went to college and I was on this in the same dorm as Kellen, who was in Ghost Island. So I had known that Kellen had gone on Survivor at the time I was like not in to Survivor. I had never watched Survivor, but I knew that she had gone. And so I was so excited to see her season. So I don't remember what that was like watching the trailer. That didn't happen for me. But I think there's some things I really, really love about Ghost Island that I think we kind of sleep on, and then some things that do make it a pretty brutal watch.
And brutal. And we'll talk about why I feel like why I feel like most people are at least bored by the season. We'll kind of get through that as we get through the podcast. Jordan, same question sort of to you. How at what point in your Survivor fandom were you watching Ghost Island? Did you have any expectations? What did you think of the theme?
Well, the part of my Survivor fandom where I watched Ghost Island was when Ghost Island aired on TV, as I've watched every season that hasn't aired except for Survivor Borneo, because I was at sleepaway camp. But I remember the first time I heard about the Ghost Island twist. It wasn't on the trailer. It was as many of us find out about. It was the same way that a lot of us find out about how these Survivor seasons are going to go, and that's on Inside Survivor. So I was reading about the Ghost Island twist. I don't remember where I was going, but I remember that I was using a gas station bathroom on some drive I was on, and I was scrolling on my phone. I was like, you know what? I think I checked Twitter, and I was like, oh, the theme for Survivor 36 is out. So I'm reading it, and I believe I was of two minds. I'm like, this could be really dumb. We were sort of in the era of Survivor themes, and some of the themes had gone pretty well. Some of them had been kind of stupid at that point, especially the previous HH8 season, which I was supposed to talk about with you yesterday, but obviously with everything with the Knicks, I had to change my day. But the other like part of me was like, look, I'm the Survivor history guy. I love the history of the show. I love that this theme is going to embrace the history of the show. I didn't know necessarily how it was going to turn out, but I did like the fact that they were bringing back some of these old artifacts, and and I figured it would probably lead to a bunch of clips from former seasons, which is always fun. So it was sort of a mixed bag for me. I knew it could go really poorly, but I also thought it had the chance to go pretty well.
I kind of see the Ghost Island twist as One World, where One World was a very interesting concept, and it's one that I feel like if given the proper everything could have really worked. And I talked about during Game Changers, I would have actually enjoyed a One World twist in Game Changers. Ghost Island is another one where I don't think they can do it again now because they brought back literally every advantage, and or twist. But with Cam, my question to you is, Jeff at the beginning of the season says, this time there's a twist. It's like, yeah, Jeff, we're in the 30s. There's always a twist. This is the twist era. No matter how much people like to shit on the 40s for it, we've been getting that since season 21. For you, at this point, Ghost Island, is it bottom of the barrel, or do you think it somehow gets worse or better?
Is it bad or is it really bad? Okay, I may like Ghost Island more than you expect. Um, I think, especially watching it now after seeing all the 40s, I'm seeing a lot. It's like a prototype for the new era. There's this journey that you go on is like solo, which sometimes happens in the new era. Where they were like, oh, maybe we'll do groups of people this time in the new era. You can play a game where you lose your vote. You play a game for an advantage, but you don't know what the advantage is. It's a game of chance. Like we have a lot of that going on in later seasons. So like seeing this version of it, it's actually almost like new era light and makes it more palatable because some of the new era stuff is like too much. And then there's still the old school elements too. So I like seeing the old school Survivor stuff with some of this new risk your vote nonsense. So I don't know. I was like, this is almost like my happy balance of old and new.
I talked about this yesterday with HHH as far as we are now getting to the point where people are risking things or risking their vote in order to get things. 30 kind of set the bar of extra votes, steal of votes, all of this. We get into 32. We bring the super idol back. We get it again for one round yesterday. Game changers is just we're throwing all of these twists at you. 36, we're just going to throw all these idols at you. Plus, there are going to be rounds where you don't find anything. And as I was watching it today, it was like, is this what the open era is going to be like? It's just every season is just Ghost Island. It scares me. It really does. But, yeah, reverse everything that happened, basically post Ghost Island. Early on, Michelle, we get the big rivalry of the season that ends way too early of Dom versus Chris Noble, because Chris, I think, rightly ends the challenge before they lose What were your thoughts on the pre-merge version of Dom versus Chris?
I think that it's interesting. I do think that it's a little bit too intense because of where Chris goes out. And I think we have too much of focus on it. I think one of the issues with Ghost Island is that it is so predictable. And because we have these like two main characters, I think it's so predictable that one of them is going to keep going and we can kind of see then who the secondary characters are. Also, I'm in my kind of like hating on white men era. So watching, I'm just kidding. Watching, watching Chris Noble again was kind of a painful watch. I was never on Chris Noble's side.
And I think he's a character there that we are supposed to laugh at, and we're going to get to the Chris Noble scene when we get to the second swap. Jordan, kind of going on another person that is shown fairly heavily early in the game is Michael Yerger, who in my note says, Aaron Spelling casted Michael Yerger to be an 18-year-old because this kid's not 18. Just with this cast, it's very hard to kind of find people to resonate with. And I did find myself resonating with this 18-year-old kid because it does seem like he has kind of a brain of his own for most of the season. Thoughts on Michael Yerger?
Yeah, I think Michael Yerger is one of the standout characters not named Dominic and Wendell on the season. They're sort of few and far between. As Michelle, we're calling you Michelle or Dav here. I'm used to calling you Dav, but you're Michelle here on the call.
You can call me either.
So I will refer to you as okay. You're Michelle. I'll say Michelle. That's gonna be hard for me, but so as Michelle said, that it was sort of a predictable season because you have Dominic and Wendell who are getting this dominant edit, which I think is fairly deserved because they played such a dominant game. But Michael Yerger is one of the people who is not Dominic and Wendell, who was sort of their adversary for a lot of the post-merge, and he really does shine in the pre-merge and post-merge part of the game. He comes off as a lot older than 18, and I know that there's this is back when we get scenes from Ponderosa where the players were shocked that he was only 18 years old, and he lied about his age, which I think was a smart move, because often as an 18-year-old, you're not going to really be taken seriously. But even if he didn't lie about his age, I think because of the way he carried himself, he would have been taken seriously. Do I think he's a great Survivor player? No. I think that he understood the game better than a lot of people on this cast. And I think that he was maybe more flashy than actual substance, but I think part of that is who he was playing the game with. There were so few people willing to make a move against this power duo, and he was one of the few people who I think was playing somewhat independently, and he did have a pretty good alliance on his starting tribe that ends up, with the swap getting decimated. But he was one of the more impressive non-Wendell and Dominic players on the season. And just to go to Chris Noble, I think in terms of gameplay, Chris Noble is maybe one of the worst players in Survivor history. But in terms of actual entertainment value, I think that the merge episode of Survivor Ghost Island is the best episode of the season. I think it is mainly due to the Dominic and Chris feud that had been building up for a lot of the pre-merge in the game. And Coach, I'm going to reference a player who I know you're not a big fan of, Coach Wade. I do think that Chris Noble is sort of the 30s coach. I think that Chris Noble is a player who has an outsized opinion of his own game. I think that Coach understands Survivor more than Chris Noble does, and that's more of an insult to Chris than giving a Coach a lot of props here. But I really think that Chris's boot episode, where it is predictable, he's getting voted out the whole time. But the fact that in that episode they leaned into it instead of like teasing, oh, maybe this is the week someone makes a move against Dom and Wendell. I think since they leaned into it so much, kind of like the Roger Sexton boot in Survivor at the Amazon, it made it just such like a dunk on him, almost like Mitchell Robinson dunking on Joel Embiid, which the winner of the season, Wendell, wouldn't appreciate.
Cam, another character that we were introduced at the very beginning of the game, and it's something that like I never noticed this the other times I've watched Ghost Island. Does Donathan need subtitles? Because I never felt like I didn't understand him. And they do it in that premiere, and I'm like, okay, maybe because there's a lot going on. But that continues throughout the rest of the season. And yeah, he has a slow start and becomes one of these big characters that you're kind of looking at as the season progresses. But that is a legitimate question. Do you feel like Donathan needed subtitles? But what were your thoughts on Donathan early in this game?
That's really funny. I watch like all TV with subtitles, so I don't think I noticed that he like had additional subtitles. I'm also Southern, so like I'm used to Southern accents. But yeah, I understood what he was saying for the most part. I was thinking watching this, and I haven't watched One World in a while, but I was like, Donathan is like the other side of the coin of like the Colton coin, where he's like Southern gay guy, and instead of being the worst person ever, he's like trying to like learn more about the world, and I really appreciated that. In the spoilers, he makes the final episode. In the final episode, they introduce him, or they describe him as like the fish out of water, which I think is really accurate. And at that point, he's in his like truth bomb era, which is where you see some of the Colton spices fighting to come out. And as a Southern gay boy, I know that temptation is there to just be like, I'm just going to blow everything up. And then people are like, no, stop. And you're like, but it's kind of fun. I don't know.
Maybe I'll win. Maybe I won't. Who's to say?
I really liked him on Rewatch. I think he is like a complex character, despite maybe being presented as like kind of in like a specific box. So yeah, I like Donathan. And yeah, I didn't realize like how prominently focused he is, or at least relative to all the other people who get like 8 confessionals, even though they're the whole season long.
He gets a lot of screen time in the premiere, and then the swap happens, and then another swap happens, and I won't say he goes straight invisible, but we lose a lot of Donathan content until we hit the merge. And even then, it's not until after the Chris vote that we even care about anything else happening in the game. Jordan, you were going to say something?
No, the confessional count for Donathan, because I always think of him as one of the bigger characters on the season. So I'm surprised. Did you say he only had 8 confessionals, or was that an exaggeration?
I was saying that a lot of other people have like they're
Oh,
around 10.
sorry, I misunderstood.
I think Angela's 10. Chelsea famously has 4 confessionals this season. Desiree is also around there. Who else?
And Desiree
Jenna.
gives great confessionals.
They're just like not pictured. I was like, what's going on? There's a time where everyone's talking about working with Chelsea, and Chelsea's not there. And I was like, where is she? Giving a confessional? Because we're not going to see that. Anyway.
This season kind of runs into, and I feel bad because this is fresh in my head, and I do feel like I could probably name off. When I did Vanuatu, I referred to the 4 non-Fat 5 men on the cast as the generic whites. And then that's just a phrase that I've been using ever since then. I feel like the women this season kind of are. Thankfully, I know there's a Jenna and a Morgan and a Chelsea and Libby. I think that might be it. I might be missing one. Oh, Stephanie
Libby
Johnson
also has like 10 confessionals.
Yes. Jacob Derwin, one of the best first episode flameouts, to the point where people sort of sometimes forget that he's not the first boot. He is the second boot. We'll start with Jacob in the rice. And also just I have to shout out Mario Lanza again because Jacob keeps saying Malolo is going to win, and it's like, well, he's putting the James curse from Palau on them because they get decimated. Michelle, just everything Jacob Derwin and just in the premiere because he's gone. What did you think about him as a character?
Well, first I would like to point out that Cam and I talked about this earlier in the year, but he got hot. Like, did you see him on the floor?
No, I have not.
You gotta check it out.
You got like a fashion makeover too.
Yes,
like, it's working for me.
Yes, Cam and I were texting about this like earlier in the year. We were like, Jacob, whoa, Jacob.
I will say I'm in a group chat of Survivor fans, and the majority of Survivor fans in this group chat are straight women. Every single one of them brought this fact up that Jacob Derwin has apparently had this major glow up. I'm a big fan of Jacob Derwin. I actually got to play Survivor Brooklyn South with Jacob Derwin, and we were in an alliance together. He's a great guy. At the time, clearly a big Survivor fan. I think he kind of went away from the show a little bit.
Yeah.
Possibly due to the experience that he had, but he was at one of the RHAP watch parties that we did recently. I believe it was the season 49 one. And he seemed to be having a good time. So it was nice to see him back like in the community because he's a big Survivor fan. And I know it was a flame out like game wise. I think like almost reminded me of like a Brandon Donlin from season 45. But yes, it game wise didn't turn out the way they would have wanted to, but they were both tremendous characters on their season, and they both in the same spot, even though Jacob, it happens to be week 1 for Ben and it was week 2. But they really represented the Survivor fan base well, not necessarily like, I'm sure there were things on there that they didn't maybe love to see from their game in terms of like their camp life type stuff and ability to live on an island, but they never claimed to be those people, right? They claimed to be Survivor fans who love the show, and I think their love of Survivor, and I'll talk about Jacob Derwin here mainly because we're talking about Ghost Island, really shone through.
Yeah, what was his gameplay like when you played with him in like Brooklyn South? What kind of? So
we started on different tribes, and then we swapped together. And I had been I had been on the wrong side of a vote when I swapped over. So I went to Jacob Derwin and I said, let's work together. He seemed like he wanted to work together also, and I think he legitimately did want to work together. We won so many challenges together, which the opposite of his Malolo experience. We never actually got to go to tribal, and then he ended up getting swap screwed on his second swap. So his gameplay was very good. He was in a good spot. He got himself into like an impossible situation. And like all LRGs, he was like on a tribe with people who all knew each other, and they voted him out.
Yeah,
but he was playing very well. Like I think he would just have gone very far in the game.
So, Coach, I thought about this several years ago when I first watched Ghost Island, and then I thought about it again today. And like, I would have wanted to play with Jacob, and I was thinking about like what that would look like and how I would like play with him, but I think that like he would have been a really loyal team player. I think the issue is like also the starting tribe. Now we did have like a tribe swap like the second day. But I think the issue would just be like you wouldn't be able to completely not vote for him if everyone was voting for him the first vote, but he would have been someone I would have tried to convince everyone else not to vote for. Like, I think Jacob, I would have maybe made Jacob my number one.
And I like in the premiere when it's shown him and Stephanie are trying to kind of get on the same page because they are shown as being very big super fans. Stephanie is another prime example of a pre-merger this season that you actually are excited to see what she has to say in confessionals, and it just kind of sucks where she ends up by the time she goes out in the season. But you can see that some people are like, okay, yeah, we can kind of vibe with this person. It's just, at least from what we're shown, he's doing a lot. And it's not necessarily a bad thing if you do a lot and it works, but it just doesn't this time. I want to get to the Ghost Island section of this premiere because of how I've been watching it. So like since May 10th, I've seen all of these moments that they continue to show on screen. I find myself not caring as much as if I was watching in 2017, 2018. It's like, oh my gosh, I remember. I'll give individual immunity to Natalie that happened years ago. The fact that they start off with the legacy advantage that had happened 2 seasons beforehand, a legacy advantage that wasn't cursed. It was used correctly. Sarah used it correctly. I know they're saying it was Sierra that got gypped, but it's like, yeah, yet it was played correctly. There is no curse on it. If we're gonna say this is a season of cursed advantages and idols, this is not what you start off with because it worked.
Yeah.
Cam?
Yeah, it's not like Sierra could have played it.
Yeah,
I feel like the legacy advantage went about how a producer or production should have expected it to go. Is that like it's one of those? It's kind of like the knowledge is power, where if you tell someone about it, it loses all of its power, and so there's this really big decision of whether you tell people, and obviously how that went for Sierra was not well. So wait, so is it Jacob gets it and then gives it to Morgan? So maybe it is cursed, actually. Well, then it goes to Dom, who uses it
plays
in
it
a very
plays it correctly,
scenario.
Whatever that means.
Yeah.
But Sarah used it correctly in Game Changers at Final 6. So it's not a
similar
curse
trajectory.
Well, if anyone's if it cursed anyone, it cursed Suri. So I guess in a way it is cursed. Here's my problem with a lot of this stuff. So first of all, the first thing, as we're saying, that was out there was the legacy advantage, and Jacob Derwin gets it, and then when he gets voted out, he has to will it to somebody. So now he's willing it to somebody who he's never really met. It doesn't really make sense why he's willing it to Morgan Ricky. Like it didn't have to be someone on the other tribe. I think so, right?
I think it did have to.
I think it had to go somebody on the other side.
Never met. So like what they could have done here to make it make more sense, and I think this would have fixed a lot of the issues that we had on Ghost Island. It shouldn't have been one person. It should have been 2 people, because you get plenty of times, and I'll take Jacob Derwin out of it because his Ghost Island trip was very entertaining, and you have like the Chris Noble one, which is very entertaining. But then you have so many which are totally forgettable, especially on a season with cast members that you'll never even turn into characters. Like Stephanie Johnson was good. I think actually a pretty good pre-merge player. But like Jenna Bowman and Angela go to Ghost Island, and they have these solo segments that they haven't even set these people up as real players on the season. So that a lot of these Ghost Island scenes are just boring. And it could have been one of the highlights of the season. As I was saying, as I'm reading what this twist is going to be in the gas station bathroom, I was excited about it. They sort of bungled how the actual mechanic worked. Even though I do think a lot of the relics that they had, like Eric's necklace and stuff, they were kind of cool having them out there. But they could have done a better job with the execution.
Well, how funny is episode 1 if Jacob goes, breaks the thing, and it says, "Nope, not today. No game for you."
Yeah.
I didn't know that was an
starting off with
option.
a wet fart. Yeah, we're starting off with a wet fart instead of what we do ultimately get. You brought up Angela going to Ghost Island. I just watched this today, and you brought up how I forgot already that Angela went to Ghost Island. Michelle, go ahead.
The reason
Oh,
I do is that I'm looking at the Wikipedia page of the people who all went to Ghost Island. I remember there were some people on there that were not memorable. Sebastian goes and actually wins his thing, and that's not really that memorable. I mean, I think the most notable, the most notable one where the person didn't win something, I guess, is Kellen, because she went with her gut and she didn't play the game. But Kellen, again, is one of the people on the season who's actually a character. So that's the problem when you have a season, and they don't know this as they're filming it, that they're only going to turn two players into big characters, but they're making the decision to turn two players into big characters on a season where you're going to have solo scenes with random players. Like, it doesn't really go together.
I think the big issue I think with Ghost Island is they really it was cool. I liked the first time we went there and with everything, but they didn't truly cement it like a place. I feel like they didn't give it a narrative. They didn't give it a background. It got kind of confusing because there was also idols on the island from Ghost Island. It's like, how did those idols get there? Why is there idols on the island and at Ghost Island? Where are all these things? Who's over Ghost Island? I feel like when we did Island of the Idols, the place was more cemented. We understood it more. It had more of a narrative. But with Ghost Island, it got too confusing.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
How did the effing stick wind up on Michael Yerger's beach?
Yeah, exactly. Did a ghost from Ghost Island bring it? We just didn't I feel
Michael
like
Yerger finds it. It was like, ooh, the ghost, and it's like, no. Oh, when he gets James, he finds James's idols. It's like, oh, the ghost. I'm like, come on.
Should they have done an animated scene of Survivor ghosts transporting the stuff? Just make it really kitschy.
I think that Ghost Island did need to be a character in this season, and that didn't happen. Ghost Island wasn't a character, and that's what we needed for this to work.
I find the reverse the curse thing of it all to be, obviously it's supposed to be corny, and I feel bad for a lot of the players because it feels like they're being told to lean into it. Unlike, so I always call it Rupert disease, of Rupert every time he plays tries to embrace the theme of the season to the point where it kind of becomes very these people are not actual bad people that tie people to train tracks. They're just the villains. You're not a real pirate, and why are you trying to kill Jerry with your shit?
I thought the Rupert disease was the rash that he got on his jeans area in the beginning of
but it's just every time someone says, oh man, I remember this or I remember this, it's like, maybe you do, maybe you don't. I'm just going to assume that you don't. But even if you do, you're not going to act like this. This is Jacob's response when he gets to Ghost Island, I felt was very genuine. It's like, oh my gosh, it's the Smuffers, the Snuffers. This is so cool. Everyone else, it just kind of felt like, yeah, this is nice. Oh, I don't get to play today? Cool. You guys can cut back to whatever's happening on the BD 2 or 3.0. What do we think of Cam, we'll ask you this. What do you think of Jacob's lie when he gets back to camp?
Oh, I gotta think of it. What does he say?
Basically, he tells about the what's actually there, and he says, "Hey, I got an idol. I just want to let everyone know that I'm going to play it tonight." And
but actually, he gave an idol to Morgan.
But they don't know that. And Brendan, I think, is the one that asked him, "Hey, where's the paperwork?"
What can you do? I think that he had to say something. He knew he was going for sure. He eggs on the other team into sending him to Ghost Island so that he can save himself. Thank God he at least got to play a game, because apparently it's about 50-50 chance of whether you even have a chance to play. And then the one thing he gets is you give away safety to someone else. That's a bummer. So I think that's what he had to do. I don't know what you do when someone asks for the paperwork. You're like, oh, I ate it.
I left it at home. The dog ate my paperwork.
The hard part with all of that was, I think we saw some of his tells. You saw a lot of his tells as he was doing it, so you knew right away he was lying. Like, he did some obvious tells too. Like, if you look back, he looked up at the left. Like, all psychologists will tell you, if you look up at the left, that means that you're lying. Like, I think at one point he yawned. Like, that's an obvious tell for that you're lying because you're not getting oxygen to your brain. Like, I think at one point he tapped his body. Like, he was doing a lot of tells.
I remember there being a lot of words. I was just like not
Yeah,
convinced.
there were a lot of words.
I actually feel like this season there's like particularly bad liars throughout the season in like different ways. And so in a way, Jacob's like kicking off the unofficial theme of the season, which is people who cannot lie to save their lives, literally to save their lives. So he's like, yeah, I gotta be honest, guys. I found something, so I'm safe.
Well done, though, by Brendan Shapiro, who eventually does get swap screwed on the season. He's another person who was playing with Michael Yerger. I thought he was playing pretty well until he gets himself in not a great swap situation numbers wise. He was my winner pick coming into the season. I think mainly because he's also a PE teacher. But I don't know. He was like good in his interviews. He seemed to know the game. He definitely gets forgotten about. He wasn't like the most electric character, but good on him. He clearly knows the game well enough to ask for the paperwork. That's definitely something that everyone should do if someone comes back from a journey in the new era or any sort of island and says that they have that they're like says to you, says to everybody, I have something. Just look, get the proof.
Mm-hmm.
He also has killer calf muscles. I noticed that like within the first 10 minutes, his calf muscles are amazing. Yes, dad calves. The season runs into the game changers issue of we're going to have a premiere episode with 2 boots, and you have basically an hour and a half to learn tribe dynamics, sort of, before we immediately do a swap at the beginning of the second episode, and eventually again in the 4th or 5th. And this is one of my big issues with the 30s in general. We talked about it. I know I keep going back to Worlds Apart, but that is where the show kind of goes off of the rails, where the backlash that season got was that all of a sudden, we don't get, and I don't necessarily care. Not the biggest fan of one show villains, but we lose that. We lose everything that last semblance of what the show used to be like, and now we're getting we're gonna have to cause all these swaps to make these players make big moves. We're gonna have to throw all of these advantages and make these players make big moves. When people talk about the 40s of just let the players play, the 30s were the exact same thing. They're adding all of these dynamics to the game to force their hands into making bigger moves. Now the problem with this season is that doesn't happen for the most part. And I've asked this question a lot over the last 5-6 days, and we'll go around the horn for this one. And Michelle, we'll start with you. Is it just the nostalgia goggles that fans have now that they just kind of forget that these problems have always existed, or is it something else?
I think so. I think that's a part of it. I was actually, when I was like rewatching it, I was like, oh, they split them into the 2 tribes to do the vote, like to do separate votes after the merge. I didn't know that happened now. I thought that first happened like in the 40s. Like, I totally forgot that that happened in the 30s. So I think that could be, I think that could be some of it. But yeah, was this the first time, Jordan, do you know, is this the first time we had like a 2 tribe vote after the merge, or has that happened another time in the 30s?
Did they split them in this might be the first time they did it. I believe it. Say that again.
Fiji was
the merge
right. That was also like that. Yeah, that one. I mean, they're all really just tribe swaps. I think this is the first one though where it like wasn't the first vote after the merge. So the Fiji one, yes, they did it in Fiji. I always looked at the Fiji one as a tribe swap because they called it the merge. It wasn't really a merge. This one they had merged and all voted together and then to groups, and I think it's the first time that they did that. Which I think again with Ghost Island, I think a lot of the things that people, including myself, have complained about with the new era is things that they also did pre-new era, like on Ghost Island, where they just threw too many things at the wall, and a lot of the focus was on the twists over the players. I do think in Ghost Island, you have the benefit of two very strong players who get to the end, both who had a case to win, and you're getting their stories. Where I think in the new era, sometimes the focus isn't even on the players at all. It's on like, as Jeff calls it, the monster or the game or whatever. It's just like the random. It feels so random. I think the pre-new era feels less random, but I do think that this was a season that sort of goes in that direction, which this feels more like a new era season than some of the other seasons in the 30s, where things were more like put together, like a David versus Goliath, where I thought the twist season.
That's always the season that we go to for that. But like outside of David versus Goliath and maybe Second Chances, like Game Changers, it's all about everything. Island of the Idols, it is about the Island of the Idols, even though the winner doesn't go. Edge of Extinction, we have whole segments where we're talking about things that have nothing to do with what's going on inside of the game. I don't know, and I think this is just me being overly defensive of post-COVID Survivor because of how I watch this, and you just kind of find these moments. And the next thing in my notes is, hey, everyone has a sob story this season. Oh, I thought I was told by the internet that this started post-COVID, when in reality, it started right around 33 because they were trying to phase out negativity on the show because of the backlash from Worlds Apart. Jordan, we're going to stay with you though.
Sure.
I enjoy learning more about people, like what makes them tick, what makes them emotional, all of that. Are you a fan of that? And did you find yourself resonating with certain individuals because of their reasons for being out there?
I would say in general, when the show works it in organically, when something comes up in the game or something comes up in an interaction with another player and it jogs their memory and it reminds them of something that's happened in their personal life. And I think that we had that with Kyle on season 48, where he was talking about being incarcerated and he was talking about some things from his past. I think, and I don't remember exactly what happened on the season that sparked that, but I remembered it felt organic. I didn't like in the early new era, like seasons 41 and 42, where they were playing all the video packages, and it really felt like they were going out of their way to show us who this person was outside of the game. I like more of like the show don't tell philosophy, where they're showing us who the person is, and it could be based on a story from their past that they tell, but it relates to what's going on, as opposed to like playing a video package and saying this is why this person is either disadvantaged, or maybe this person has had hardships in their life. I care more about what this person is, who this person is on the island and how it relates to the game, than who they are off the island. And sometimes those two things can relate to each other, and that's good storytelling. I don't like it when it's shoehorned in. And I do think when we did get that kind of stuff pre-new era, pre-41, it did used to feel a little bit more organic to me. And I think they've done a better job in the second half of the new era of making it feel more organic again. And I think a lot of it was COVID, right? I think a lot of people are at home, in close quarters with their family. And I think the show sort of leaned into that. And I don't think it was necessarily a good thing for the show. But again, it's not something that's totally new to the new era. We always got some of these like sob stories and things that relate to people's personal lives. And I don't always think that's bad. I just think it's bad when it doesn't have anything to do with what's going on in the game.
Cam, for the first 30 days of this, I would make a drinking game based off something from the Funny 115. Well, Funny 115 ends at 30, so from 31 to today, I've had to make my own rules up. Well, today was take a sip for every Navidi Strong reference or keeping Navidi Strong reference.
How drunk are you right now?
And once again, I had to stop, with enough time to go live, because it does become a very big part of the season, especially with having two swaps in the season. And specifically coming from Kellen, I feel like I won't say the on-screen leader, but the on-screen pusher of Navidi Strong. When you think Kellen, you think Navidi Strong. And I like Kellen, but I also like underdogs. And I hated the fact that this was the narrative of the season. Cam, thoughts on Navidi Strong and just the Navidi tribe in general. I guess if you can remember who was on Navidi 1.0, great, but just them as a collective, going into the merge, just anything dealing with them.
I'm noticing like an unexpected pairing with my previous season that I podcasted, which was Redemption Island, where there's literally it's just a steamroll of Rob and his zombies versus the other tribe. And I feel like one thing that I appreciate about this season is that there's Navidi Strong, but there is the Laurel and Donathan finding their way into that. And so I wrote in my notes, I said, it seems like the moral of the story here is make alliances early and often, because there's a point where Desiree is like, oh, I need those two to work, but like she's too late because Dom and Wendell have already like grabbed them. So I thank God for that little mix of purple and orange, I will say. Otherwise, I think that maybe the punishment when you have a really predictable post-merge destroying the other tribe is that you get under-edited unless you're the winner or second place. Maybe that's the editors were like, if you're going to make a boring season, we're going to give you one figurehead.
If you're not making big moves, because that's what the show's all about now. We have to make it all about these crazy over-the-top moves, because that's what the fans that's what Jeff keeps pushing, and that's why we keep at it. If you're not doing that, if you're boring, if you would have played in season 10, we can't have this anymore. Because we've heard post game and here and there in the season that Chelsea is a threat. We just don't see it, and it's going to happen again tomorrow in David versus Goliath with a couple of players that we're told, not shown. Even if going to 41, the winner of the season, shown or told, not shown. Michelle, when I play online games, when I play live games, one of my icebreakers is always, who's your Survivor crush? And an answer that pops up a lot is James from Ghost Island. Now, my question for you is,
James from, wait, who is James?
The Asian guy from Ghost Island.
Oh, okay, yes.
I'm surprised that's a common answer.
It is. I get it at least once a game. Someone says James, like, yeah, he's ripped. My point of that is I enjoyed James this season until he refers to Dom as Russell Hands, a person that I despise with every ounce of my being. I hate talking about Samoa, and the reason Heroes versus Villains is no longer my number one is I finally just got so tired of the Russell of it all. That's just number two. He refers to Dom as Russell Hands 2.0. Michelle, my question to you is, what were your thoughts on Dom as a player? Not talking about endgame, just like Dom as a player for this pre-merge, because we're getting to merge in the next section. What do you think of Dom as the character?
I really liked Dom. I did not see the similarities between him and Russell. I did think like he had some sneaky qualities, especially at the beginning. He had some sneaky qualities, but I think that what's interesting about Dom is he kind of like goes between this line of hero and villain. Like sometimes he'll say things that go more one way versus the other, and so I think that's really interesting. I also think in another with another group of people, I think Dom could have gone out first. And at first when you're watching the season, you kind of wonder if it's going to go that way. And then I think he does a lot to kind of change that. Um I I was going to talk about his jury management, but that's for a little bit. Um, but I think that he's a very interesting. I think that he's very interesting. Now, like I said, like I am, friends with Kellen, and I know, she has always talked about how during the game, their relationship was hard, but she's like friends with him now after the game. So I also think that uh, I think that he seems like a person that if you could spend time with him on the island, he would be really interesting. Because that's one thing about us also doing uh a tribe swap like day day 2 is I think that does make us get like Navidi strong and these tribes strong, because instead of like really developing relationships, we have to go back just to lines. And so I think that's why also some of the gameplay wasn't as interesting. So I think if we had more time to see these relationships evolve, and I would have liked to see even more time with other people with Dom and not just Wendell with Dom.
Yeah, and the other person that we do see him interact with a lot, Jordan, is Chris Noble. We're going to bring this back to Chris Noble because he has a. So here, for y'all that don't know, I refer to Jeremiah from Kagayan as Purple Jeremy. He has a Purple Jeremy moment where he tells everyone he's a model, but he wants to keep it secret because it's, this could be a game-changing move that he makes here. It's the Chris Noble scene. It's the one where we get him rapping, we get him, whacking on about just his theory on life and how he's an entrepreneur. And it is played for laughs, and I think that's why the segment goes on forever, is because they want us to judge this person, they want us to laugh at this person. He's not in on the joke, and you also don't feel bad for laughing at him because he is traditionally hot guy model. Like, of course I'm going to laugh at this guy. Jordan, Chris Noble, the character, I know you've kind of touched on him a little bit earlier, but just Chris Noble, this moment, I guess, of Chris is basically becoming the clown for our entertainment.
I think we're talking about someone who's really a non-factor in the strategy of the season, in the gameplay of the season, but we have brought his name up more times, I think, than anyone besides Dominic and Wendell. And I think that speaks to the fact that he was a necessary piece to have on this season. And you don't root for him. I don't think anyone's watching the season and hoping that Chris Noble wins Survivor, but you're watching it, thinking, what is this guy going to say or do next? And it's not the point. It doesn't get to the point where, like, there have been some villains in Survivor history that aren't fun villains. Like they're like either mean or they're rude or they're not fun to watch or live with, or they're like just bad people. I don't think Chris rises to that level. I think he rises to the level as best Survivor player, but he is just totally unaware of how he comes off to everybody else. And I think that's one of the best archetypes in reality TV. And I think that if it weren't for Chris Noble, I think I might look at Ghost Island and say it's already like in my, definitely bottom half season for me, probably bottom quarter season for me. But I think with a lot of the Chris Noble stuff, I might think of it as like a bottom 8 or bottom 9. I don't even know where I really have it now. So I think that we need Chris Noble for the memes, for the laughs, for the rapping. And, I look at him now from the perspective of Dominic and Wendell, who, it's really the story of those two players. And I think to myself, like, what's the difference between Dominic and Wendell as a player? And I was someone, as I'm watching the season, Dominic is the person I was rooting for the whole time. Like, I always liked Wendell. I still like Wendell. He's like a fixture in the Survivor community now. But Dominic fits that like strategic archetype that I typically root for on the show. And I know that a lot of people maybe didn't love him as much as I did. But when you look at maybe some of the reasons why Wendell ends up winning the game over Dominic, you can look at their relationship with Chris Noble as a microcosm of how they played with a lot of different people. Because Dominic's feud with Chris Noble was very public, to the point where the Chris Noble boot episode, the biggest like clash of the season, is a very loud confrontation between Dominic and Chris. The most memorable part of that episode is Wendell's voting confessional, where he tells him to put the pen down and stop rapping. But that's not in front of the tribe. That's not to Chris Noble's face. Chris Noble goes out of the game probably assuming, even though he does end up voting for Dominic, he probably ends up assuming that he and Wendell don't really have any beef, and he and Dominic have all the beef. And he's, for whatever reason, I don't even remember what his voting reasons were for why he votes for Dominic over Wendell. But I can see someone who is maybe more, like or less willing to forgive a personal beef with somebody. I could see Dominic losing someone's jury vote if he had similar interactions with them. So I think that I think that's very interesting to like look at the early, like the first vote of the merge here and see that Dominic is having more public feuds with people where Wendell isn't. The thing is, though, like you were asking Michelle before, like why the Russell Hans comparison isn't such a great comparison. Dominic and Russell Hans, I guess the only similarity is that they're both like strategically imposing players who were able to get a lot of votes done, to get like push a lot of things through. The difference is Dominic is a good person and Russell Hans is not. I think a lot of people like Dominic, and I think you look at the jury vote, Dominic didn't get killed in the jury vote. It was a 5-5 vote with a tiebreaker. He loses 6-5. Dominic gets more votes at this tribal council than Russell Hans gets in 2 final tribal councils. So I think it's just a matter of, do you like that style? Do you respect that style? If I were ever on a jury and someone played like Dominic, there's a very good chance I would vote for him because I respect that style of play. But I also see there have been plenty of players in Survivor history who have lost jury votes for playing similarly to Dominic. And I think the best comparison to Dominic, I think he's more like a Tony, someone who is, who gets in fights, gets in feuds, but is fun and ultimately people respect him. I think that's a much better comparison than Russell, who everybody hates.
Yeah. Just to finish that thought, you bring up how Ghost Island could be lower on your list if not for Chris. I give my personal rankings at the end of it where that season kind of lands. It's funny because Redemption Island would be probably the worst season for me if Philip didn't exist. You can look at a lot of these bad seasons, and then you look at Thailand, which is my least favorite season. It's like, okay, there's nothing fun here, and I enjoy Jan, but if you're telling me that Jan's the person that I have to like lean and say, okay, this is not my bottom season because Jan is there, there's an issue.
What about the part where Clay gets choked?
Wait, what?
What about the part where Clay gets choked in the attack zone?
Yes, I mean the attack zone is funny in a bubble. Like it's a very funny moment in a season that you just don't care about. And like I said, if you remove Jan from Thailand, it's still my least favorite. If you add Chris Noble to Thailand, I think it could have come up a little bit. Yeah, it's great. I'm glad you said it like that. Cam, so we, kind of sticking with the merge here, and Jordan brought it up earlier about this being the best episode of the season. And I have in my notes, merge is fun. It's not the best, but with what we are getting later on, yes, this is the best episode of the season because, Chris finds this. He finds JT's idol from Game Changers once again. Just happened 2 seasons ago. Oh, 2 seasons ago, yeah. He finds JT's idol. He might lose his vote if he picks the wrong urn, this, that, and the other. So he has an immunity idol that lasts 2 rounds, and he knows that it is him versus Dom. He knows this, and Dom plays this. I keep wanting to call it a safety without power. It's not. It's a legacy advantage. Dom plays his legacy advantage. Libby's going to catch a couple votes here because that's another narrative the show just kind of buries is why do people just keep on going after Libby outside of pretty girl who could be Parvati. So Libby catches votes here. Cam, I know the very easy answer is it's Chris Noble. Like, of course he didn't play his idol. Do you find yourself frustrated that it doesn't happen?
Frustrated that he didn't play it?
Yes.
No, it makes it so much better. It's so much better. He has an idol that he can only play now or tomorrow. And he's like, I'm waiting for tomorrow because I'm so good at this game and everybody loves me so much. Even though I feel like on the island, the players could hear like the Dodo music playing as he's talking and doing things. No, it's just the perfect outro for Chris. It's so fitting for his personality. People will ask me, what do you like about Survivor so much? It's literally watching. I wish Michelle was here. It's watching like really confident bro dudes like Chris get schooled in something that they thought they knew all about and that they were guaranteed to win. And it's just like so satisfying every time. So yeah, beautiful, perfect. No notes.
I'm going to stick with you here because you nodded your head when I brought the Libby thing. Desiree brings up. I keep calling it. Desiree brings up. How, Libby has to go. Like all the Navidi men are worried about this. The Navidi women, we're going to go after Libby, but we're not shown why because this is just another in a long line of issues that the 30s have of we're just gonna do things, and you're just gonna have to make up in your mind why things happen. I always go back to Michaela and Andrea, and Game Changers of, oh well, now they're gone. Cool. They want Libby out for reasons. Cam, on your most recent time watching, could you figure out why they were so hell bent on getting rid of her?
Not really, but I was like hyper focused on it, and I was like trying to track it down. So in episode 3, I think, is the Morgan boot.
Yeah.
And as Morgan's leaving, she was like, "Don't trust pretty girls like Libby." And I was like, what did Libby do here? I think Libby was like, yeah, maybe we could work together. Like, it was just like the most like normal thing to say in a strategy session ever. I don't know. Maybe she was doing cool stuff off camera or on camera, but on the editing room floor. But I didn't hear her perspective on what she was doing. One of the things that like,
oh, sorry.
What's up?
No, I think we're done. Oh, you are. Okay.
I was just gonna say, one of the things that like Edgic folks look at as like an alternative to confessional counts and like confessional time, it's like references from other people about that player. And if that's how you're measuring Libby, she's like a main character, at least for her first few episodes. It's just very odd editing. I was thinking, watching this season, now that I've watched a lot of Australian Survivor, the way that they edit the season feels really similar to Australian Survivor. And maybe that's why watching it now, I'm able to just sort of like deal with it. Yeah.
Jordan,
it just didn't matter in the end game.
Jordan,
I think Cam was right to bring up that third vote of the season, because that's really the only vote where I'll say Dominic and Wendell, but like the larger Nvidia Alliance like has any sort of adversity that they have to overcome during the game. And it is not necessarily because of Libby. I mean, Libby was not with that group originally, but she was the one who I think did the best job of convincing the Nvidias that she was with them. And I remember like watching her in those conversations with Morgan and Wendell. And she's good. Like, she's good in those scenes. Like, I don't think she really did anything after that to give her this like, oh, she's an amazing player or this huge threat status. But she was good in that episode. And I think that Wendell was a little bit concerned about the fact that she was the only one who pulled one over on them earlier in the game, and she could potentially do it again. Also, there just weren't that many. And here's the other thing: when you are the actual biggest threat, the Wendell and Dominic, you have to paint other people as a big threat. So it might have been their propaganda. And to be a good Survivor player, to be the person who's the biggest threat in the game and make it to the end, because a lot of times the person who's the biggest threat gets clipped at like 5 or 6 or 7, whatever. I think to be that person who gets to the end, either you have to be really good at challenges or you have to be really good at propaganda. You have to be really good at saying there's this other person who is this big, massive threat, and it's not me. And if you get rid of me, they're going to beat you, when really you're the threat. So I think maybe it could have been a little of that.
Michelle, so stick with me on this, because this is just, when I do this, I do train of thought with my notes. So, and I am not one of these like, oh, I hate everything that Jeff Probst has ever done because of this, that, and the other. I like Jeff. I don't like when he shits on characters that don't live up to what he expects the show to be in, and this is a prime example of that. At the Michael Yerger Idol, the first time, whatever, Jeff makes a not so subtle dig at Michelle Fitzgerald when he says, the new jury format supports people who make big moves and makes sure coattail riders don't win. And in my notes, I ended with "fuck you," because I did feel like that was a moment where it's like, hey, we're only doing this now because the person that we felt like was doing all of the craziness, all of the big moves and wrong didn't win. And the person that did, the only reason that she did win is because of this. I have no real opinion on the panel as far as how final tribals go. Like, I could take it or leave it. I want your thoughts on the panel version of the jury, and do you feel like, just as you as a viewer, as a player, or whatever, that it is fair, I guess, to hold it against a winner for winning in a non-flashy type way?
Yeah, that made me have a lot of different trains of thought. First of all, it made me wonder if why they put Michelle into the last season, into season 50 so many times, and was like, Michelle's game was so great. Michelle's game. Was that just because of this season? Was this like a sorry note from Jeff Probst?
I think it was. I think it was.
So that's really interesting. And then what was your question about the jury?
What do you think of the panel jury as compared to the pre-34 form of it?
I don't really prefer one or the other. I think that they both can work in different ways. I do think that I don't like when people don't speak when it's not their turn on the jury. I really like only when like it's the person who's asking the question. I don't like a whole lot of back and forth. Um, Yeah, and then for me, for a winner, I always think that the winner deserves to win. I always think that the winner deserves to win. I think that a lot of times when we're talking about like non-flashy gameplay, what we're really talking about is the person who made flashy gameplay not having good jury management. So I think that that's the issue. Um, I think that Michelle deserved to win her season, and it was really because of her really wonderful jury management.
Yeah,
That's
and
actually, I do think that that's a little bit of the issue for Dom. Is I think of like this is so small, but after he like did one challenge and they were doing a slide puzzle, and he was like, "Usually I can do a slide puzzle in 10 seconds." Dom would say things like that that kind of I think rubbed people the wrong way, and he wasn't being thoughtful about that.
yeah, I so I agree with basically everything that you just said, and I would say that this perception that a lot of the audience members have, and I feel like it comes from what they're being told to enjoy. Oh well, if a person didn't do this, that, the other, if they didn't have a resume or make big moves, when in reality, through 50 seasons of the show, it's usually the people that don't do that. And so that's why Millennials versus Gen X is another one of these seasons that has always kind of moved down my personal list, because you can tell all of these people. I think at one point either Will or Zeke says, I'd rather go out making a big move than get to the drag to the end. It's like, really? Because I'd rather go to the end and try to state my case than flame out at 7 making a big move, because ultimately that didn't decide anything for you other than you lost out on a chance at winning the game. Jordan, same type of question that I asked Michelle there. Just your thoughts on the panel versus the traditional style. Do you have an opinion on it? And do you think that we have slowly gotten out of this you have to do all these crazy things to win the game mentality that a lot of the fans, and I feel like the show, tried to push on us?
So in terms of the final tribal council format, I've always been a fan of the old school way of each person asking their question. And the reason why is I think that like the vast majority of jurors go into final tribal council knowing who they're going to vote for. So I really think the most important thing about final tribal is creating entertaining television, because very little is going to change in the moment. I'm not going to say never. It sometimes does change, but I think there's so few examples in Survivor where the result would have changed based on what happened on Final Tribal Council. So I think that some of the greatest Final Tribal Council moments are the questions. Let's do Hawk, which isn't a question. It's a 5-minute speech, and it's like some of these old school, like it's really your time to either, you could prop somebody up, you can ask a question about whatever you want to ask, you can totally like burn somebody because they may have burnt you in the game, and that's your opportunity to do it. I think that the panel maybe leads to some decent discussions, But I don't think that's as fun as someone getting up there as some juror who's been sitting at every single tribal council and having their final moment on the show. So I always like that from an entertainment perspective. From a game perspective, I don't think it really matters all that much. I really didn't like when we first started the panel version where Jeff wanted to like break it in up into the without play out last. I'm happy they don't do segments anymore. He kind of let the players dictate where the conversation's going to go. And I do think I think this Survivor 50 jury did a good job of like moving the conversation around where it made sense of like why people were voting for some people and why they weren't voting for other people. So I do think you can have good final tribal councils with the new format. I just prefer the old format, but my default is always like to prefer the old school. So I could be a little bit of bias there. But now in terms of what was the second part of the question?
Panel and do you think that the show has kind of started to stray away from basically the it doesn't have to be anti-Michelle just in general, but just the hey, social winners, we want these people making the big moves. Do you think we've kind of gotten out of that?
Here's the thing. I think there's always like the big move thing, or like you have to make big moves to win the game. I always think that's sort of a misnomer. Like I do think to be considered, like I do think there's tiers of winners. I don't think that every winner is just on the same pedestal as every other winner. I think there are great winners. I think there's good winners. I think there's average winners, and I think there's bad winners. But I think what makes a player a great winner is someone who managed the social relationships with everyone. Mm-hmm. Jury management's a huge part of that, but also somebody who had agency in the game. I think it's more about agency and being a decision maker, or at least someone who is involved in like who's getting voted out from week to week, as opposed to like making big flashy moves and idle plays and saying, oh, I'm going to vote out my number one now because that's going to look good to the jury. So I think that there's this misnomer about what a big move is. I think a big move can be a great move. A big move can be a terrible move. The only thing that really determines, is this a good move for you, is does it get you to a point where you're closer to the goal of getting to the end, but also getting to the end against people that you can beat. And I think if you go to the end, I think if you do nothing, and I think if you have like let's say maybe the jury likes you personally, they still need to respect you to vote for you. I don't think they're just voting for someone who they necessarily like the best. Now, you can win that way if the other two people or the other person who's against you is disliked. And I think that's where you maybe get some of your average to below average winners who didn't do as much game wise, but you just have a weak final three. So I do think that you have to be considered a top tier winner, at least by me. Or if I were on the jury, who would I vote for? I'm voting for the person who I felt had the most agency and was making intentional moves throughout the game to get themselves in a better position. Now, the caveat to that is what if I hated this person? What if I hated living with this person, or they were like a horrible human, like a Russell Hantz? I would then have a hard time voting for them. But usually, especially now with the fact that I think most of the people they cast tend to be like pretty, I wouldn't say normal people because they're still reality TV contestants, but they're like, I think more like even keeled. I think I would most usually end up voting for the game that somebody played over how I view them personally. But again, I'm not out there. I've never been out there and played before, so I don't know. And I'm sure that my perception of someone's game could be altered by my relationship with them, and it probably would be.
And just quickly going off of that, I brought this up 4 times during this. So day 8, day 9, day 14, and day 34 of those are the seasons where, because people, bitter juries. So a bitter jury are people that are like visibly pissed off at people, visibly or vocally pissed off at people. I don't think Samoa was one. I don't like All Stars. These people were very upset with both of these people. Vanuatu, these people are overly upset with both these people. Fiji, they're overly upset and drunk at these 3 black faces that are sitting in front of them. And Game Changers, they hate Sarah, and it seems like they love Troyzan, but like you just said, because Troyzan had literally nothing, they couldn't vote for him, and they had to vote for the person that we're shown, with the exception of Michaela and Zeke and Sari. Everyone else is giving Sarah a very hard time there, laughing at her when she says she made genuine bonds with them. They're like, oh yeah, this is all a joke. Andrea's saying she feels sick, possibly voting for her to win the game. So I do think that what you were saying is correct, obviously, of you can do things, you could be super nice, but at the end of the day, it has to be a good mix of both if you want those votes at the end. And I know Michelle's going to bring up Dom's jury management in a bit, but before we get to that, Cam, I shouldn't be upset with this line. There's a line that said during Michael Yerger's stick play. There's a line that Michael Yerger says that for years, almost a decade now at this point, has been one of my least favorite things that has ever happened on the show. And it's crazy because Michael Yerger brings up the stick and he was like, this is the stick that Ozzy used, blah, blah, blah. And then he says, this one's for Ozzy. Ozzy's not the person that played the stick. Ozzy's not the person that gave the stick away. Ozzy's the same person that made the stick. But him saying, this is for Ozzy, for some reason just makes me so overly angry every time I watch it. And it's such a stupid scene. Like, I shouldn't be that upset over something so trivial, but I am. I guess my question with that is, of the idols that they brought back this season, whether immunity necklaces, idols, advantages, all of that, which one did you feel like, wow, that's really cool that they brought that specific one back?
Ooh, that's not where I thought your question was going. Okay.
Sorry. I just have to really put out there that I hate that this is for Ozzy. It's not for Ozzy.
Unfortunately, I'm gonna answer it in kind of like a sarcastic way, I think, is that I think my favorite weird one is when Dom is given the fake idol from Millennials versus Gen X, I think. And then they're like, it's still a fake idol. It's been here like a few years, but it's still bad. They're like, figure out how to use it, maybe. And then he's like, oh, okay. And Dom is always on message. He's like a Rick Devens type where he's like, I know what the producers are wanting out of me. So yes, I love this. Yes, and I love this fake idol and I'm going to use it. He's like, I've already told people I have a fake idol. So now I just have like another fake idol I can use. Anyway, I think that's my favorite because it doesn't make sense. There's sort of like the Ghost Island stuff is like not consistent. Something's been there for a while. It's supposed to mature and grow in power, but this one didn't for whatever reason.
Yeah, also, they matured down to an extra vote.
Oh yeah. So things are maturing in different ways. This fake idol was thrown into the fire at Tribal. I watched it happen, and they showed it happen in this episode. And they're like, but also we still have it here. So I'm not even convinced. I think it might just be a random shell they put up the string.
I don't even think they've been sending these things to this Ghost Island. I think it's all.
I don't even think Ghost Island is like a consistent real place. I think they just made it up.
To the Island of the Idols that we're going to get in a few days.
It looks a lot like the Edge of Extinction. Too, I think.
Is the effing stick the real stick? Like that, I always sort of doubted that because you could make any stick look like the effing stick.
Yeah, he's draw face on any stick.
Yeah,
we need a side-by-side comparison.
Yeah, I know they've said. I believe Jeff has said it is the same stick, but I mean, Jeff says a lot of things. So
who they burned that one too?
It really was. So, Coach, should he have said this is for Eliza or this is for Jason Siska?
This is for Eliza. I would say it's for Eliza, but because Jason, they're not going to evoke Jason's name in 2017, whatever it was. They might evoke Eliza's name at that point. I don't think she had like gone on her burn everything down tour with the show yet. So I think they could have. I mean, they bring up Richard Hatch earlier in the season. I'm fairly certain. So like,
you know what I thought the funniest Ghost Island thing that they brought back, the funniest relic is the necklace that Eric gave away because it's so big. How are you supposed to hide that anywhere? It's an immunity necklace. It's like an individual immunity necklace, and now it's an idol. So I just thought the visuals on that were very funny. Also, like it's that and the stick are like the two most iconic things they brought back. That's the problem also with Ghost Island. Like, there's not that many iconic relics from the show's history. I mean, now there's more, I guess, because they put so many different things into the game. Well, I don't know if I'd call them all iconic, but at least there's more relics. Back then, it was really the stick and the necklace that were the two relics that had like the most lore behind them. The rest of them didn't really have that much interest.
I would throw the James one. I would throw the James ones in there too.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, yes, yeah. James, yes.
Which are also huge and can only hide those in a season like China. You could never hide something like that at a Fiji camp. At this
why
point.
is this Chinese? Why is this like Chinese character?
Yeah, what's this all about?
Like, don't worry about
Michelle,
it.
you were going to say something?
I'm sure Chris Noble knows the difference though between Fijian characters and Chinese characters.
Yeah, there's no way.
One idol I would have liked to see is I read something that Zeke made an idol on his season and then hid it. And then when he came back for Game Changers, like someone found that idol. And I always feel like that's lost lore. They've never done anything interesting with that. That's one thing I would have loved to see on Ghost Island. That was missing for me.
Do we feel like these players would have known? Oh,
no, but that would have been a cool. That would have been a cool story.
Yeah,
that's
but then
true.
Brendan Shapiro would have been like, "Where's your note?"
Yeah, where's your? I've seen Leonard for Gen X. Zeke doesn't do that, so. Donathan's truth bomb. We're heading into the finale now, and Donathan's going to burn the camp down. Not like how people have literally done it. He's just going to try to stir up the pot. Cam brought it up earlier. Colton-esque. I've never thought about that comparison. I don't even know if I enjoy that comparison, but whatever. Just thoughts on Donathan's truth bomb, and also thoughts as we go into this final six. Watching it for the first time, who were your front runners? Is Wendell the guy? I know Jordan brought up that he was more of a Dom person here, but are there thoughts going through your mind that it could be Wendell based off of what we've seen going in? We'll go around the horn for this. We'll start with Michelle. Just everything going to the finale and dealing with Donathan and Wendell. Wendell's stock, I guess, going in. I think that'll be the right word.
Well, Donovan got the fan favorite award of the season, and I don't know if he would have had gotten that without this big moment. I think he also had these like very sweet country boy moments that we talked about earlier. So I think he knew in his heart he wasn't going to make it to the end. So why not just like blow everything up? And I was a Dom. I wanted Dom to win, and I'm really good at like I've picked a lot of winners at the beginning of the season. Yeah, and like I really thought that Dom was gonna win, so I was surprised. But like I said before, I could see where the little things he said over time probably kind of added up against him.
And I'm literally saving that question for you. So by the time we get back to you, we will get to Jordan. Same question. Just going into the finale, what were your thoughts on who you thought the front runners were, and just everything dealing with Donathan in this 6 to 4? Yeah.
By the time we got to the finale, there was no doubt in my mind that Wendell or Dominic was going to be the winner of the season, and I think that's one of the problems with this season. But also, I don't necessarily only put it on the editors, because I really do think there were only 2 players on this season who were playing winning games. You have Donathan and Laurel, who had been in this spot of like working. They were in Wendell and Dominic's alliance the whole time, but they were clearly not seen, as I was talking about agency before. They were seen as the lesser pair, or they weren't even really a pair. Like they were a pair. But they were the lesser pair within that alliance, because Dominic and Wendell were just more active, which is, I think, what a lot of jurors look for. And I think we could see that in the vote, where Laurel's there and gets no votes. Wendell and Dominic are there and get 5 votes. So I think they're clearly seeing that dichotomy between those 2 groups. I think that that Laurel and Dominic, not Laurel and Dominic, Laurel and Donathan did the thing on this season that is like my biggest pet peeve for Survivor players. And I think that's when players get complacent with their position. I think that you could, if you are in an alliance, I'm not saying, again, I don't think you have to be the person who turns on your number one for no reason, or for like little reason, and then you put your own game in jeopardy. But I think when there's this clear duo, which is a very powerful duo with idols and who they're good at challenges, you have to go after them at some point. And I think, to me, the last round with any sort of suspense was the final 8, where Chelsea is voted out 5-3. That was like the clear round where you could have made a move numerically against Wendell or Dominic. And I don't remember, was either one of them immune at that vote? I'm going to actually look back now because I want to see, because it does, I guess, sort of, if one of them is immune, you could worry about the other one playing the idol. But when Chelsea is voted out, Wendell's immune, but Dominic is susceptible. Actually, no, hold on. No, that's wrong. Dominic's immune, but Wendell is susceptible, and I believe Wendell does get. Let me just see this here. Yeah, Wendell does get the 3 votes cast against him. To me, that's the clear move where if Laurel or Donathan wanted a chance of winning the game, they had to vote out Wendell there. And I think part of it is a credit to Wendell. He had this very good relationship with Laurel and with Donathan, and I think that I'll pull Dominic into that too. He made them feel safe as well, but they should have had more situational awareness to say, we have to get rid of one of these guys here. I'm not saying whoever survives that vote, I guess it would have been Dominic because he was immune. So let's say Wendell goes here. I'm not saying you can't work with Dominic again, but you can't let these 2 people who are outplaying everybody survive from vote to vote to vote. And I think after the final 8, everyone else essentially was drawing dead. Because now they both have idols, both good at challenges. It's going to be very hard. Even if you get rid of one of them, the other one is probably just going to end up winning. And if you were to get rid of Wendell here, it takes away all the power from Dominic, because yes, Dominic has an idol. Yes, Dominic can win challenges, but the next time Dominic loses after Wendell goes, he probably has to play his idol, right? And now he doesn't have an idol anymore. And yes, he could find another one. I did compare him to Tony. Like, there's a chance that he finds another one and maybe ends up winning the game. But I think where Dominic and Laurel and basically everyone lost the game was this final 3 vote. I'll give Angela Perkins credit here because she actually voted for Wendell instead of Chelsea. So I think she was actually, we don't talk about her so much, unless you're talking about her skill eating sea slugs.
Yes.
I think was on the right side of history here. But instead, you get to this point now where Wendell and Dominic are running the game. And I think one of the saving graces about Ghost Island, there's plenty of bad Survivor seasons. I'll say bad. I don't really think there's any bad, like horrible Survivor seasons, because Survivor is my favorite show. So even my least favorite Survivor, I still like better than any other reality show or most shows in general. But in terms of Survivor, there are some bad Survivor seasons with really good dominant winners. But usually it's just one player. It's like, Kim Spradlin winning one world. That's not a great season, but and it's partly not a great season because of how dominant and great Kim Spradlin was. There was no suspense, right? But here, at least you had 2. At least you had 2 people. So even when we got to the final 3, you didn't know which one of them was going to win. You knew it wasn't going to be Laurel, but you didn't know between Wendell and Dominic which one it was going to be. I was rooting for Dominic. I had my suspicions that it was going to be Wendell just based on, editing type stuff, because we see, again, it's I guess sort of the strategy versus social thing, where usually social wins out. But I was rooting for Dominic here, but I'm very happy with the Wendell win. He played a great game.
Yeah. I hate doing this. Just push back quickly on the one world thing. I always say Sabrina and Kim, but that's because I watch One World a lot because of the merit. But yes, and I do. For me and Cam, I'm gonna get to you in a second here. Going into the finale, yes, I thought it has to be one of these 2. If it's not one of these 2, it's going to be Donathan, because it's the only thing that makes sense based off of whatever, if you want to call it the edit or what have you. But it had to be one of them, and obviously I'm culturally rooting for one person, but in reality, I'm not I have no ill will towards either one of these people winning. I want one of these 2 people to win. And so as the episode kind of continues and we get to that final 4, and this is a narrative that has gone on at least the last couple of episodes of Dom and Wendell saying, hey, we probably need to do something about each other at some point. And we everything comes to a head here. Cam, were you shocked that Wendell was put into fire? And once he wins that, was it a certainty to you, or do you think there was any type of, we could actually still get a Dom win here?
I think, I don't know, that Dom or production told Dom, somebody put the idea of like, you should probably go against Wendell and Fire. Like there's this shadow of season 38 to come. There's like here's what's going to happen in the future. I don't think that Dom needed to put himself in Fire and knock Wendell out. Clearly he got 5 votes on his own merits. I think this might be kind of like did he wait too late also? I don't know, because if he knocks out Wendell at like 5 or 6, he goes, right? Yeah. And I just think I'm like, Wendell's so good at building furniture, and in my mind that translates really well to like building fire. I was like, so obviously then Wendell just wins earlier. And then we don't have the first tie ball game in Survivor history. The only one so far?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that when that does happen, when we do have Chris Underwood put himself in Fire, it's like because he had to. But Dom's won like 3 immunity challenges at this point. He's made all these idol moves and fake idol moves and like done all this stuff. I don't and like no, I think that an additional like bullet on his resume is like, yeah, I'm the only person. Well, that's not true, but I'm one of the only people who actually tried to take a shot against Wendell. Like I identified him as a threat. We tried to do something. I think the only other people who did that is like Chelsea.
Yeah, the women tried to go after him.
So he's like showing his awareness of the game. Like I tried to make this move. I couldn't get him at 5. He had an idol or immunity or both. I think he has both.
This is big ass
so,
necklace.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. And then we see that much more common in New Era. I think the one I can think of the most is Kyle putting Camilla in Fire, being like, you have to go because we're going to split votes. This is a bit of a rewind. I just wanted to say, so episode 8 is when Laurel's big move, that arc starts. She's like, I'm going to finally make my big move. And then I think episode 9, she explains why she has to make the big move. She's like, Dom and Wendell are going to split the votes, and then I'm going to get everything left over. And she says that repeatedly. And it's what she just didn't know is that the leftover is 0 votes.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like very poetic. And like, I think that I've played
right about them
splitting game in Survivor. I'm like, I feel her. Like, I get it. I've been there. And I also think that like in the game of Survivor, I'm going on a tangent, but in the game of Survivor, you want a Laurel as your ally. You want someone who is going to give you all the information from the other side. I think that they're like in a secret alliance. I don't know if it's publicly known for ever. I don't know if that's like announced.
I don't know. And also the 4th person in that alliance changes after a while because it's Kellen. Kellen's in it at one point, and then she gets swapped in for Laurel. Laurel gets swapped in for her. I know Donathan is still there, but yeah, I think it swaps at a certain point.
There's almost like there's like a Big Brother-esque like onioning that happens where there's like the core of Dom and Wendell, and then they add on their like people, and then it balloons out, and then they can just chip out the outer layers, which I respect. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
But what I think what's funny is that so Laurel spills the beans a lot of the time when people are trying to get Dom or Wendell out. She's like, no, I don't want that to happen. And then like towards the end, she is like trying to rally troops to do that. And then Angela does the same thing that she did. And I was like, it hurts when someone uses your own playbook against you. Like that sucks.
I think there's a world where if she does make a move and it's successful and she's able to get one of those guys out and then the other one goes out because they're not as insulated, I think we're potentially looking at a world where Laurel ends up winning the game because I think I think if she and Donathan go to, well, I don't know, let's say she, Donathan, and like Angela or Sebastian go to Final Tribal Council against each other, I think that she's the one who's looked at as the best player of those 3, even though I now look at Laurel's game and think to myself that it was a, complacent, non-strategic game. I think if she does make that move, I would think that it would have to be her spearheading it and not Donathan or Angela. I just can't see that happening. With Laurel, at least, like, she knew the game. Like, she was a Survivor fan going in. She was an RHAP patron going in. Like, she knows Survivor. But she just didn't play it. Like, she played it, but she didn't play it in a way that, like, that was a winning game, but the opportunity was there. So I think that, outside of Wendell and Dominic, I think she's someone in the end game who maybe could have gotten respect from the jury, but if she made these necessary moves, which is a big if because it never happened. Oh, Kellen is the other one who I think that could have also won if she had gotten to the end, but it would have required making a move against Dominic and Wendell, and she at least seemed willing to at a certain point.
Especially after the family visit.
Kellen gets her win in the Sequester Survivor.
In Sequester, yeah. Social. Michelle, social. Michelle, this is your time now. We're at Final Tribal. We have Dom versus Wendell here. And it does seem like a few people are kind of, and Dom has like a Mike Turner moment where he realizes, oh, so many people are actually upset with me. And you could tell that he feels bad. Like it's not, these people think, oh, I did all this stuff and I don't give a shit. And it's like, no, he feels horrible that these people feel like he treated them a certain type of way, and that Wendell was this person that was their best friend. Just thoughts on this Final Tribal, specifically the two of them, but also how do you think that Dom did lose the last 6 people that went out of the game, if you include Laurel? Because there's the first 5 I'll vote for him, and it's the last 6 that don't.
That's right. I think, like I said, I think there's a couple parts to this recipe. I think the first part is like, he does say a lot of little things throughout the whole game that I think just like add up. But I think over time as well, because the second half of the people don't vote for him, I think that they feel like Wendell was more loyal to them in some way. Yeah.
So, and I guess to stick with you here, one of the big reasons that I love doing this like the way that I do is I like to pay attention to people that I may have not paid attention to in the past, just to like see what's there. And I do think that Laurel does do pretty well at Final Tribal. The big issue is that she's sitting next to these two people, but like every question that is thrown at her, and just like her, I think it was Michael Yerger that gives her credit for, hey, you're a Malolo and we sucked. Every version of Malolo sucked, and you were still sitting here. This season was all about Naviti Strong, and somehow there was a Malolo here, and there was a Malolo that got voted out at 5. So you can tell that these people are giving her credit without voting for her, but they see the merit in what she has done. They're also, the other part of that is they're also giving her shit for not getting rid of one or both of them. But I was vibing. I probably still wouldn't have voted for her, but I was vibing with a lot of the stuff that she had to say here. And I think I just kind of blacked it out in the past because I didn't care because I hate this season. But today I really felt myself being like, okay, Laurel understands and it sucks, but it's fine.
Yeah. In some ways it felt like, I thought she had a pretty strong tribal, but in some ways I feel like she kind of also knew it wasn't her game. Like you could kind of see it clicking for her. Also, another interesting thing is that I think that she really felt like her and Wendell were number ones, but she was not actual Wendell's number one, but he made her feel like that. So that's why he got her vote. And so I think that was really important that like she was at the end.
Yeah, I mean, she is the swing vote at the Final Tribal Council. Like that is the reason.
And I wonder, because like if anyone else could have been by them, could have that vote, gone towards Dom. But if the last 5 people all voted for Wendell, then most likely it was always going to be that way.
Yeah, Jordan, same type question here. I know it's been a bit for you, but this Final Tribal in general, was there any world that you thought it could potentially end in a tie?
I mean, I don't think I was like thinking about that going into the vote, but I mean, I knew that Laurel was not going to get votes. Like I couldn't imagine Laurel getting a vote. So it's a 10-person jury. If one person doesn't get votes, the tie is a possibility. I don't think I was thinking, oh, this is going to be a tie going in. I thought it would be a really close vote. And it was one of the few times in Survivor where I'm like, you have two legit potential winners here. I think that's pretty rare. I don't think you usually get that. So I was very interested to see what was going to happen. The tie definitely surprised me. And when Jeff was turning over the last vote and he didn't say the winner of the season, he just turned it over. Or no, it was when he said, "Oh, I'm just going to read them live here," which now is like par for the course in the new era, except for 50. But back then they didn't do that. So that was obviously the clue that it was going to be a tie. So I mean, obviously I picked up on that before he started reading the votes, but like during Final Tribal, I'm like, either one of these two guys could win. I think the interesting thing about how the jury votes worked out in the season is that the first 5 people who joined the jury all voted for Dominic, and the last 5 people all voted for Wendell. So I think, that could just be the people who liked Dominic ended up being the early jurors. The people who liked Wendell ended up being the late jurors. But you could also look at it like, the people who were living on the island longer with these people were more drawn to Wendell because he is like the softer personality. He's like the more nurturing person, the more I think they're both actually very good social players. Like, I don't think Dominic would have been able to pull off the things that he was able to pull off in the game if he didn't have social capital. Like, I don't even like to really differentiate between the social game and the strategic game, because I don't think you could have a successful strategic game if you don't have social bonds with the other players. You have to have one to have the other. So I think that the fact that these people who have been living on an island with them for much longer gravitated towards Wendell, it just shows that he had that like personality that was like the more maybe approachable than Dominic, who Dominic was looked at as like the strategic force, the mastermind, the person who was, the one kind of snaking everybody and blindsiding everybody. I think maybe when you're living with those two people longer, you're going to maybe favor the one who you feel less threatened by, or threatened is not really the right word because they're out of the game at this point, but you maybe feel less betrayed by that person.
This is going back to an editing thing that the season and a lot of the 30s do, where like we just don't know about a lot of things. So Desiree, when Wendell's like trying to say, hey, he's basically doing the anti Brian Heidick. Brian Heidick can't answer a simple question about Penny, or Brad Culpepper can't answer the simple question about Michaela. Wendell's getting ahead of that and telling everyone things he knows about them. Just like say, hey, I learned about you. I was putting in the time to get to know you and all of that. And what's funny is when he brings up to Desiree, he's like, who's the better rapper between, I think he said Chance the Rapper and Kanye or whoever it was. And Desiree's like, yeah, but what does that have to do with anything? Like, what else, and Desiree is one of the people that does vote for Dom. Yeah, I think that at a certain point, there was a switch of, okay, these conversations just kind of feel like whatever, to all of a sudden, you're day 31, 32, and you need these conversations to get you through the rest of the game. And that this person, Wendell, is here continuing to have the same conversations he's always had, but now it's resonating more with you because I'm losing my mind out here most of the time, and I need a happy face. I need someone that I know I can just sit to and chill with. And, and I feel like, because a lot of people say that Dom did have a good social game for what we're shown. I think the biggest difference is 34 days in, when you're starving, it could come off as abrasive when he's also showboating at Tribal and all this. This is not a jury that it doesn't seem like a lot of people care about the song and dance of Tribal Council. And like we've all brought up, the jury is split based off of when they go home at the end of the day. So we end up with a tie. For me, there was no world that Laurel wasn't going to vote for Wendell. I feel like that was one of the, I won't say telegraphed, but we all kind of knew it was going to happen. Yeah. And Dom even said later that he knew that it was game over by the time he realized it was a tie, what was going to happen. As we start to wrap up here, Cam, we're going to go to you. Just final thoughts on, because you did the rewatch within the last couple of days, right? So
last like week or so, yeah.
Okay, so just this time watching Ghost Island, did it get better or worse for you, or did you find yourself caring about things that you didn't in the past, or?
I would say it got better for me because I vaguely remembered people's placements. I knew that there's a Bradley downfall arc that's very satisfying. It's happening within the Chris Noble downfall arc. And I was like, we got simultaneous downfall arcs from people on different starting tribes. I love that. I liked seeing, I think Stephanie is one of the most, she feels like she's either going to be the merge boot or she feels like she's going to be like this big character. And then she just gets her, what is the phrase? Her feet cut out from under her, whatever. It's like really hard to watch, but it is compelling to rewatch. And so I it's like you said, like it's fun, or whoever said it, it's fun to focus on sort of like the non-main characters and see what they're up to, like what's going on outside of the like main message of the season. And I think what Jordan said too is really compelling. In like a dominant game, there's like one star, and there's like twin stars orbiting around each other, and that's very compelling to see. And there's like, because when you tie, it's like a game of like every little thing you do and say matters, and it's like, oh, if Dominic could have changed this like one conversation, or it's like really fun to watch that too, versus watching Kim Spradlin win, or Rob in Redemption Island, where you're just like, there's not really much to unearth, especially in the later episodes. So even though the post-merge, especially marching towards the finale, is like a little predictable, there's like stuff to look for, and that kept it like very fun for me to watch.
Michelle, we'll go to you next. Just final thoughts on Survivor Ghost Island.
I think what I found really interesting was how much like the new era it felt, and how we were talking earlier, how it kind of almost gave birth to the new era. I think the thing that felt the most boring to me was how many idols there were, and a lot of times we talk about that with advantages. And I also thought, the tribal split where they're both voting, and how we like do that in New Era. So it just really reminded me, it really felt like a birth of the new era. And I'm really hoping as we go into this open era that it's not going to be more of the same.
You brought up the idols. One thing I forgot to mention during Final Tribals, Wendell says, and this is just one of these, all of these moments of like Survivor lost the plot long before post-COVID. Wendell says the phrase, idol management. It's like, what is this? Like, what? This has never been a thing. Why do we care about this? And I keep going, this time around, I keep going back to Reynolds and Caramo, and after he finds his second idol and says, this is how you win Survivor, it's by finding idols. It's like, no, it's not. It shouldn't, like, this has never been the case, but we're getting this in season 26.
People were like tripping over idols. Huh? People were literally like tripping over idols in this season. Yeah. It was so boring.
Fun pieces of jewelry you find that's going to give you your best chance. And so now there's this fourth element of the game of, oh, how many fun pieces of jewelry did you find and how did you play them? So I love Wendell as a player, person, whatever, but it was like, no, you can't, it can't be. It's like me saying I don't like Will Wall because he made up this whole resume narrative. Even though I know it was Tasha that did it on screen, I can't bring myself to not like Tasha, so I have to blame it on the white man, like Michelle said earlier. Like, I have to put it on Will Wall. And he's a Reagan guy anyway, so it doesn't matter. Jordan.
Will Wall was even born when Reagan.
The 18-year-old Will Wall?
Yeah, so his hero in his pregame press is Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan, okay. My hero is James K. Polk. But no, anyway, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I was going to make a point. So I'm going to start the sentence with something that you don't usually hear. There's a really interesting moment from Survivor Island of the Idols that relates to what we're talking about, and it's the final tribal council, which Island of the Idols, you'll get to it soon. Really good pre-merge,
Yes.
good finale, and then there's the dark like 8 episode merge where you have all the dance stuff. This is in the post-Dan world of Survivor Island of the Idols, where you have a decent finale episode, and you have the whole like trinket conversation of you have Detective Dean, who was like the person finding all the trinkets, and he had a trinket that he thought was a real trinket. But anyway, his whole story was about, I guess, idol management, or how he used idols, or did whatever in the game. But then you had you have the why am I blanking on the winners?
Tommy?
Yeah, Tommy. He's boring as hell. But you have Tommy, who played even though he's boring, played a very solid game, and he didn't need the trinkets, right? And I think that, and I think we go to a lot of seasons where an idol can be used as a tool, but it's not going to be the sole reason you win the game. If your only game is finding idols and playing idols, you're probably not going to win. Now you can. It's a great tool to have. Like, you want to be in control of it, or you at least want to know who has it. But I think it's more important, like, your relationships with people, and then like what you're able to do, maybe to work around another player having the idol. I think that shows better strategic gameplay than just finding something in the woods. But I think Ghost Island on a rewatch, there are some seasons that I think really benefit from a rewatch. The biggest example of this I could think of is the Edge of Extinction, which in real time I didn't love, because you have this ridiculous Chris win. But then when Chris is going to win, you could just watch it knowing that, and the season isn't ruined by the fact that he wins. You could just kind of enjoy the funny characters and the funny moments. It's actually a really good season when you watch it back. Ghost Island, I don't think, gets the same bump on a rewatch. And ultimately, I think it was better in the original run, because you would at least have the suspense of Final Tribal Council, who's going to win between Wendell and Dominic. But I do think there are some nuggets that you could pull from this. First of all, you get Wendell, who's become like a fixture in the Survivor community, and I think that he is a like well above average winner. He's played a great game. He also has built like this this Bryson Wen empire of all these viewing parties, and you could see when you meet Wendell, you could see why he was so successful on the season, because he's like one of the nicest people in the community that you're going to meet. And you have Dominic, who I think is on the Mount Rushmore of best games that didn't win. Like, I think his second place game on the season, he got as close as you can get to winning. And I think he's up there. Like, the only games, I mean, Suri's the best player to never win, because she's done it so many times. And I think that her both Micronesia and Exile Island games are more impressive than Dominic here. And that's not to shade Dominic, that's just saying Suri is great. I think that Rob Cesternino's Amazon game is maybe more impressive than Dominic, but I would put him like right after that, kind of like in the Aubrey and Kilron category too. I put her up there as well. So I think you get that. You get someone who came so close to winning, who played a very dominant game. And then you have some of these fun characters along the way. I think Kellen is a really good character. I think that Laurel and Donathan didn't play well, but you can sort of analyze their games and saying, what if they had made this move? It's interesting to talk about, and we have been talking about a lot about that. And Michael Yerger and Chris Noble, and James Lim, who apparently everyone thinks is hot. So, and then also going back to Jacob Derwin. Like, Jacob Derwin is, I think, one of the most relatable players in Survivor history. And I've gotten to meet him, and he's a really nice guy. So I'm happy he got a chance to play. And then, of course, Morgan Rickey was supposed to be the second coming of Parvati, and then she just gets voted out so early because of the swap. So it shows what could happen to someone who comes into the game with being a lot of people's winner pick, but one thing goes wrong. Cochran talks about how luck is so prevalent in the game. You could be a Morgan Rickey who maybe if she had a better draw, could have gotten a lot further and won. Like, she was in the Wendell and Dominic alliance, but she goes out third. So there's some interesting nuggets here.
As we've done this, I've started going through my head of like, I really wish Jacob Derwin was just the first boot, Because if he was the first boot, then he would be up there as like no one is sitting there ranking the second boots ever. People love doing rankings of first boots, and I think that if he had just gone home the first, if they hadn't sent him to Ghost Island, that we'd be sitting here talking about him, Zane Knight, Jelensky, and all these other people. But I am happy he got to live his dream a lot longer than all those people that got voted out first. My final thoughts on Ghost Island. This third time I've done the marathons, the fourth time I've watched the season. And it is a season that like I will inevitably pass out on at some point during the day and have to go back and rewind and figure out. Thankfully, I only passed out during the Shapiro vote out, so I only have to go back and watch one episode. Thank goodness. But it's just a season that has never really resonated with me. There are, yeah, you said a lot of fun characters. I love watching Sebastian not be high on camera. I love watching people randomly hate Libby on camera. I love a lot of it. But it's just not fun for me. And the twist, like I said, if Ghost Island and One World are the twists that I wish had been done better, One World they could still do. They could never do Ghost Island again because they used pretty much anything that's actually important. So for me, through 36 seasons, I have it 32. I have it right above One World, and I have it right below HHH. And I don't see it. I mean, I'll probably finish at like 40 or something. We'll kind of see how the next 2 weeks go because I have 13 days left. Isn't that so exciting? Okay, final two. So final two questions. Round the horn. Cam, who would your number one ally be this season?
I think Laurel.
Laurel.
She's the person you want. She's telling you everybody who's scheming against you.
Jordan.
I'm between a couple people. I think early on Jacob, but if Jacob got voted out early, which he does, I can see now. I think Dominic and I share some similarities. I don't know if that means we would end up clashing or if we would work well together. I think the beauty of the Dominic and Wendell alliance is that they were so different in personality, yet they really seemed to love each other and became like such good friends out there. Which that's another thing we haven't really talked about is that like they have a really cool relationship. Like they really became very close friends. So maybe if I see myself as a Dominic, maybe Wendell is the one who I lose to.
Okay, and then Michelle.
Yeah, I still think Jacob, but I also think I think I would have played really well with Michael. I think I would have played really well with him, and I think we would have had like a really good duo of being like really honest and playful, and I could have kind of like taken him under my wing, and so I think I could have played really well with Michael. And then I would have loved to play with Callan and do some, girl action together. Gabe asked in the chat, who do we think made the Ghost Island DVD cover? And I checked, and it was Wendell, Dom, Laurel, Kellen, Michael, and Donovan.
Was it Chris? Oh, Donovan, really? Okay. I would have put Chris on there. I feel like I think Chris belongs there over Donovan, even though Donovan got a lot further.
Mine. So to answer my own question, I mean, I know Gabe said, "Oh yeah, the hot one, Chelsea," but like Gabe just doesn't know my type because my type.
No, you're Kellen, right?
It would be Kellen, yeah.
That's what
his pride.
Hannah Shapiro type.
But even if I wasn't thinking like that, it would still probably be Kellen as long as I was on the BD. If I wasn't on the BD, then yeah, I just have to find my own way. But let's just hope I end up in the BD, and she's recently divorced. Who's to say? No, at that point she was recently divorced. And then obviously, final question, Jordan, something the modern day fandom would not enjoy about Survivor Ghost Island.
I think that the modern day fan is very annoyed when certain characters are made the main character, like the blatant main characters, and other characters don't really get a story. I think that the new era fan would be very thrown off by this season because we don't usually see it. And I think 49, the reason why 49 is, I think, one of the least popular new era seasons is because it really felt like, and yes, we knew part of it is that we knew they were going on to 50, but like Rizzo and Savannah were clearly the main characters of that season. And I think that Ghost Island, I thought, was a more fun viewing experience than 49, even though I think 49 was probably like a more interesting game. But 49 had the dark cloud of just knowing everyone knew that Rizzo and Savannah were going to be on 50, and you probably figured that they would either get very far and one of them was probably going to win. So that sort of ruined the 49 experience, which we didn't, well, luckily didn't have for Ghost Island. But I think the fact that you had two main characters and everyone else was just sort of like, I wouldn't say everyone was fodder after them, but like, you know, Kellen has a big story, Chris has a big story, but besides that, it's really just the Dominic and Wendell show. I think the new era viewer wouldn't love it.
Cam?
I think that this is the beginning of like really jumping the shark with themes. And I think that especially the end of the 30s is like why the 40s had no themes. And now people are clamoring for themes, but people forget when this came out, everyone was like, that's dumb. That's a dumb idea. And then David versus Goliath, they're like, there's a tribe called the David tribe. Like, that's so goofy. Like, what do you mean? So I think that while we would welcome any theme, anything to hold on to, like, it is cheesy. And in the finale, the first thing Jeff says is he's like, yeah, the theme's like, and I was like, Jeff, don't say that. You're Survivor's biggest cheerleader. Like, what are you talking? So yeah.
He also hypes it up as a great season again. And then Michelle.
Wait, Jeff does?
When the reunion starts, he was like, and like the great, because the numbers were great. Like this was still the top on Wednesday, Thursday night at 8:00. They beat everyone. So it was like another great season of Survivor. It's like, thank God those numbers look the way that they do, huh? Because if they didn't, then how would you actually feel about this season? But yeah, Michelle, something that you think the modern fandom
I think the modern fan would hate the tribe swap on day 2. No one wants that ever again.
Yeah, well, as much as people clamor for swaps,
not on day 2.
We don't need 2 swaps. We don't need 2 swaps over the course of the first 5 episodes, and because we don't know these people's dynamics. We just know that, like, we know that Navidi has at least Kellen, Dom, and Wendell, and that's kind of it. We don't know it. We have to be told later, oh, this person's original Navidi. I'm like, who is this person? And they're like, oh, well, this person is Desiree or whoever. It's like, oh, I knew she was the black person that had shorter hair. That's all. I didn't know what tribe she was on or anything except for that. For me, and I brought this up at the very beginning of this, I don't think the emotional confessionals would resonate, because apparently we were just so turned off from people's emotions now that so I don't think that would resonate. And Jordan did make a good point earlier, and when I hit the 40s next week, I will try to compare the two. But I don't think the modern fandom would like the fact that we get a lot of emotional confessionals, even from people like Chris Noble. Chris Noble, when he goes out the first time, he has a very I felt like it was very touching. I like those types of confessionals. But I don't think they would like that, and I don't think that they would enjoy, yes, the amount of swaps. I think that the modern fandom still likes swaps to happen, but one. And even Jordan, you see, when you brought up the Fiji merge, it finally hit me that is what they did in 50. Like, their merge was just another swap.
Yeah, it was well, that was even worse because it was the Blood Moon, three tribes going, 3 groups of 5 where one person's immune, and it wasn't interesting. The Fiji one, yes, Michelle Yee gets screwed over, but it was at least more interesting because it really was just a tribe swap. And I also agree. I think one tribe swap is good. I think doing it too early doesn't really make sense, because then what was the point of even having the initial tribes? They're not going to really play a factor in the game. So I think you want to do it like give it 3 rounds maybe, like or 3 episodes. And I think the only time it really makes sense to do 2 swaps is on a returning player season, because you know the characters already. You don't have to necessarily get to know the characters. In that case, there's so many pregame alliances. You might want to mix things up a little bit and have 2 swaps. So I'm fine with it in that case. But on a new player season, I think 1 is good. And I think that the new era goes too long without tribe swaps. Before they finally get to sort of a tribe swap in 44, and then more like a real tribe swap in 45. I think they went too many seasons in a row with no tribe swaps and having the same exact format. I think that's the problem with the new era. It's the same format and it gets stale.
If you're going to do 2 tribe swaps with the cast of 20, and we're going to say this, we're going to head out. If you're going to do it at 15 and do it at 13, because that's the only you can't do it at 18 and then 15. If you give us 20 to 15, at least we have 5 rounds of getting to know who's actually with who and who's on what tribe. And then you quickly switch it up again before merge or whatever, but you have to merge at 11 instead of 13. Okay, I think that might be it. So we have Michelle back in a few days for Survivor 41. So fun fact, I have a wedding that day. So I have like the hotel that I'm staying, similar to yesterday, I pulled an all-nighter to get HHH out of the way. I'm going to have to do the exact same thing for 41. So I'll be very dressed up and have a bald head and shaved face for it. But it'll be Michelle and Joelle, who I had back a couple weeks ago. So that will be our panel. This is closing the door on both Cam and Jordan. Jordan, thank you. This is my 3rd time doing this, and I've wanted you both times that I've done it so far. So I'm so glad that I was finally able to get you.
I'm happy it worked out this time, and I'm happy the Knicks were able to wrap it up yesterday.
While we were live yesterday, I think like 35 minutes in, I look at the camera to John Farrell and I go, the Knicks just won the championship. He was like, they were down by 16. It's like, yeah, well, they just do.
That's what they do. The Knicks come back. No lead is safe, baby. New York forever.
Jordan was there. Jordan recorded it when I said I was not going to do this marathon of Coach 150. And Jordan was at the top of the list of people to reach out to when Coach got eliminated, because it's like, okay, well, you were there from ground zero. I have to have him back when I inevitably do this. So, Jordan, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And then Cam, you did 2 bad, or at least from my opinion, 2 bad seasons. And I think that you delivered both times. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It's been great. This is one of my favorite panels I have had through 36 days. I'm really excited for the back half of this. I'm really excited to have Michelle back. Does anyone need to plug anything?
Listen to Rob Has a Podcast if you like Survivor. A very good Survivor podcast.
And Survivor Trivia.
That's my segment on there. So it's if you're not listening to that, you should be. Because if you like this podcast, you'll definitely like everything about Survivor. So.
And that'll wrap it up. We will be back tomorrow with a very good panel. We've got including another SNY alumni and Mark Levy. So we'll be back tomorrow for Survivor David versus Goliath.